and welcome back to No Vacancy. Before we start, we just want to thank all of our new subscribers and the people who take the time to like and comment. It really helps us out and it's extremely appreciated. So let's get right into it. Today's video is going to be a story from a man who grew up in Alaska and some of the scary things he's encountered being in the wild. So sit back, relax, and enjoy your stay in room 66. Number 1. Boy Scouts in the Wild. I took a trip out with my Boy Scout troop to one of the beaches in Alaska when I was younger. We took a boat over to one of the nearby islands. Some of these islands are the size of the state of like Connecticut or Rhode Island, just to clarify, and set up camp. It was the usual scout stuff. We practiced knots, lashing, building a nice fire pit, and getting wood together. The usual stuff. Built a nice little campsite in a clearing between a bunch of trees, not far from the beach, but without any mud. Nice and dry. Even now, looking back, our scoutmaster had found a pretty sweet spot to camp. Oh, and he was armed. You always want to be armed in the rural Alaskan wilderness. He had his revolver with him just in case. A deterrent against some Alaskan wildlife, a good defense against others. Anyway, the day winds to a close, sun goes down, and we're starting to turn it in for the night when we hear howling. Lots of it. Many of us are a little alarmed, as it seems pretty close. Our scoutmaster, however, assures us that it's on the other side of the mountain and goes right to sleep. The howling gets closer. At this point, most of us can't sleep, and we're all wondering how close these wolves are going to get. When we remember, wolves and a lot of other wild animals don't like fire and tend to avoid it. A lot of early explorers could use fire to keep wild animals, including wolves, from getting too near. We have a good-sized fire pit, and so our labor begins. We stayed up all night, each and every one of us, keeping that fire going. We climbed up every tree in our campsite, cutting off branches, collecting angel hair moss, burns hard and bright, and keeping things going until dawn. At which point our scoutmaster woke up, shook his head at what we'd done, though he was seriously impressed, and went to take a leak. Then he let out an exclamation of surprise. All around our nice campsite, just outside the space the fire had illuminated, wolf tracks, circling our campsite. They had been circling us for God knows how long, just outside where we could see, watching us. Glad we kept that fire going. Then again, maybe they were just making sure humans weren't going to burn down the forest. So wet there, it's highly unlikely. But all the same, yikes. They were very close by. Very close. Number 2. The missing. In a completely different vein, people died or went missing with pretty astonishing regularity. Looking back at growing up in my small town, around 1,500 people over the years. We seem to have lost someone almost once a year. Sometimes it was a boating accident, sometimes it was a wreck, sometimes it was an overdose, and sometimes people just disappeared. Kid a few grades under me went out on a normal excursion with their skiff and just never came back. Search and rescue, Coast Guards, the works. Never found the skiff, never found the life preserver, never found a body. Just gone, without a trace. And sometimes bodies get found the same way too. I remember being a kid and listening to Alaska News Nightly on the radio. Okay, well, my parents were listening and had me quiet down for the story so they could hear it. But a guy had pulled off an old set of abandoned crab gear, probably subsistence, and found a human skeleton, flesh pretty much gone, clinging to the buoy just under the water. Authorities had no idea who it was or how exactly they'd gotten there, although the guess was that they'd fallen overboard. I never heard what became of that one. Number 3. The Kushtaka. On top of this, you've got local folklore, like the Kushtaka, stories of which you'll hear growing up, and every so often, you'll find someone who swears up and down that they had a close call with one. Kushtaka are an evil spirit known to the Tlingit tribe of Juneau, Alaska. The spirits are thought to be ottermen and can morph into otter, man, and monster in between. These creatures are thought by the natives to be the reason for the disappearances in the area known as the Alaskan Triangle, a stretch of land where numerous travelers go missing every year. Since 1988, more than 16,000 people have gone missing in the remote part of Alaska. The Kushtaka legend is as follows. If you're walking through the wildlands of Alaska, you will be approached by a man or group of men. They seem very friendly, kind, and come across as kinsmen. If you become lost or injured, these beings will appear and claim that they are there to help you. Occasionally, the Kushtaka will lure victims to them using the scream of a woman or the cry of a baby. After meeting with these creatures, they attempt to lead the victims deeper into the Alaskan wilderness. If successful, Kushtaka do one of two things. Either tear the person apart or turn them into a Kushtaka. This is believed to prevent the person's soul from reincarnating and causes them to become trapped as a Kushtaka. It is said that travelers are easily manipulated by the Kushtaka in otter form due to the cuteness and the playfulness. To protect themselves, natives travel with dogs. It is said that the Kushtaka are terrified of dogs and will avoid them at all costs. Spooky stories are par for the course in a place like rural Alaska, but at the same time, Alaskan bear tales is the tip of the iceberg. Old fishing tales from long-timer fishermen are great as well, plus spooky. Until we get out in space, Alaska is going to remain the last frontier. One eyewitness claimed to have seen a Kushtaka late one night on a trail near his house in Juneau. He and his friends were simply passing time on one Saturday night, the way high schoolers do. They grew bored of their activities, and someone suggested a nighttime walk through the woods. Having spent plenty of time in the nearby woods and not being concerned about anything too dangerous, as bears were hibernating, the group put on their clothes made for 0-degree weather and headed out into the cold night. The night was black and the clouds blocked the moonlight. A very faint reflection of light was bouncing off the deep, white snow on the terrain. The group could effectively only make out shadows. They crunched the snow as they made their way up hillside, until someone came running from the back of the group. When asked what he was doing, he claimed to have heard snow crunching behind him lightly, as if something was following them. Another jokes about it being a Kushtaka. After the comment, the group fell silent for a second, until someone managed to choke out that it was just a tale to keep children from wandering into the woods. Still unsettled, the group decided to head home as it was near 3 a.m. As the group slowly walked back, each looking intensely into the woods, covering every direction, listening for something odd, a baby's cry pierced through the night. The group set out dead sprint for the safety of the house. Once out of the woods, one turned back towards the tree line. What he saw was like no creature of nature. It was 5 feet tall and stood on its hind legs. It looked a bit like an otter, but things were askew. It had large patches of thick brown fur, but where the fur was missing, the monster had black, leathery skin. It had almost human-like hands, covered in the same black skin, with spindly and bony fingers which ended in large claws. Its teeth were long and sharp, and eyes were a bright, burning yellow. With a wretched shriek, the creature fell on all fours and sprinted towards the group. They made it to the house with the boy that stopped to look back further behind the rest. The others claimed the monster was right on his heels. By the time they slammed the door shut, each of them peered out the window by the door to see the creature stalking back and forth in the front yard, until a loud bark broke through the night air. With that, the beast's head arose quickly and looked for the dog. It broke into a sprint for the woods, and that's when the boys knew that they had been hunted by the Kushtaka. Thanks, guests, for your stay here at No Vacancy in room 66. Remember to leave your thoughts in the comments, hit the like button, and subscribe.